The arrest began with a smell. Not sirens, not boots, not even the bureaucratic clang of a compliance bell. Just a smell, sharp, citrus metal, like lemon left to ferment in a rusted pipe. Ellie M. Reese, 7 months pregnant and already too tired for drama, lifted her eyes from the chip table at the border station and sighed. They were late. The officers, if one could call 15-legged, translucent bone creatures officers, glided in with scrolls, not weapons. Their leader, a bloated cephalodex with ceremonial tassels twitching from its gill hood, cleared its throat sac with a sound like someone wringing soup from a sponge. This proceeding shall commence under Galactic Code 332 Gamma, subsection W, concealment of biopotential entities. Ellie blinked. Rue, her daughter, didn't. The 7-year-old sat beside her, hands folded neatly, small boots dangling over the bench. Her eyes, a sharp mirror of Ellie's own steel gray, didn't flinch as the scroll was read. You are hereby under arrest for the unlawful transport of an unregistered pre-sapient biological entity, the cephalodex wheezed. I'm pregnant, Ellie said flatly. Precisely, it replied, pleased with itself. The room, if one could call a glowing cube suspended over a canyon of vacuum a room, hummed with agreement. Dozens of species lined the transparent walls beyond the force field. They'd come to watch the humans break. The mother, the daughter, the illegal fetus. Outside the chamber, a squat new screech drone from the Zarati Gazette chirped a headline into the void. Terran reproduction declared bioweapon by Imperial advisors. Humanity faces charges of womb smuggling. Rue leaned in close to her mother and whispered, they think you're a war crime. Ellie didn't smile. They're not wrong, but they're also very stupid. One of the officers produced a glowing restrainment band woven from plasma thread and dipped in something that smelled like anxiety and wet moss. It clinked around Ellie's wrist. Another reached for Rue. Ellie's voice, when it came, was soft, but it froze every hand, claw, and pseudopod in the room. Touch her, and I'll show you what the inside of a colonizer looks like. Silence. The cephalodex coughed again, uncomfortably. Madam Reese, threats against arresting officers during a lawful procedural. I didn't threaten. I explained. Outside, the crowd stirred. A 3-headed Parex elder held up a data slate showing betting odds. Humans weren't just losing. They were expected to beg, plead, grovel. That's how they usually handled these situations. Politely, quietly, with shame. But Ellie just stood. Her robes were simple. Her boots scuffed from 1,000 kilometers of desert. She was no diplomat. No soldier. At least, not anymore. Do you understand the gravity of your actions? The cephalodex asked. She looked around at the floating audience. Hierarchs of the Empire. Representatives from the Frond courts. Galactic influencers, with blinking eyelids and Neuralink feeds broadcasting her every heartbeat. And across from her, watching from the viewing spire, the Emperor's personal advisor, Lord Scalevar Drax, who hadn't blinked in the hour he'd been watching her. Ellie's answer came slow and cold. You put cuffs on a pregnant woman, and on her child. The Emperor's advisor tilted his head, intrigued. Ellie stepped forward, dragging the glowing restraint with her like a pet snake. And you think the story ends here? That you'll get your headlines, your mock trials, and maybe a trade concession or two? She looked at the nearest news drone, locked eyes with its lens. No, this is just the start. Rue tapped her fingers on the bench, a rhythm that sounded too precise for a child. She whispered, he's watching now. Who? Asked the arresting officer nervously. Rue blinked. My uncle. They all paused. The cephalodex rolled its many eyes. Childish nonsense. But two things happened at once. First, across the galaxy, every Human Defense Council member received a ping. No preamble. No screaming general. Just a live feed. Ellie Reese. Shackled. Pregnant. Her daughter at her side. A time-stamped, location-tagged humiliation. Second, a message was transmitted across 7 channels into galactic hyperspace. It bypassed encryption, went straight into Imperial archives, and even translated itself for the slow-minded species. From United Earth Strategic Defense Council to Galactic Empire. Your mistake. Message. You arrested a mother and her child. You declared war. We accept. The data packet that followed was only 10 kilobytes. A single photo. A grainy image of Rue asleep on a bed of scavenged jackets, her hand curled in Ellie's hair, her other arm clutching a carved wooden figure. No logos. No demands. Just a reminder. The room trembled, not with noise, but with attention. The galaxy, it turned out, had been listening. The cephalodex looked at its underlings, suddenly unsure. Do we proceed? Lord Scale Vardrax raised one pale, clawed finger. We do. Especially now. Ellie smiled. The kind of smile that meant someone, somewhere, had made an irreversible error. Outside, an announcer declared the incident, a minor legal scuffle with the Terran breeding caste. Inside, Ellie turned to Rue and whispered, "They've seen the teeth. Now let's see if they notice the jaw." A transporter beam began to hum under their feet. It felt like vinegar against skin. Rue winced. "Close your eyes," Ellie murmured. "Will it hurt?" Rue asked. "No," Ellie said. "But I don't want you to see what they look like when they think they've won." In orbit above the station, 17 ships of the Imperial Writ circled lazily. Not warships. Not yet. Just vessels of diplomacy and enforcement. Elegant, cruel things shaped like orchids and bone. Inside them, officers adjusted buttons, drafted condemnations, prepared paperwork for the sentencing of a human woman and her daughter under intergalactic family control protocols. They were 2 hours into the processing when a small object passed through their perimeter. It was just a pod, unarmed. It docked without asking. Security panicked, scrambled. But the pod was already open. Inside was a single item, a lunchbox, hand-painted, human child art. It had a sticker that read, "Ellie plus Rue equals family." When a senior officer reached for it, it hissed open. Inside was a note, hand-scrawled in Terran cursive. "You drew blood from a mother. Now meet the ones who raised her." Before anyone could process the meaning, the lunchbox let out a sound, a soft, synthetic lullaby, and detonated in a perfectly silent, localized EMP burst. Nothing fatal, just humiliating. Every Imperial ship went dark for 12 minutes, just long enough for the humans to send 20,000 more identical pods into 1,000 other systems. Most didn't explode. They just played music, family recordings, lullabies. But the message was unmistakable. Back on the station, Ellie sat calmly in the cold glow of the detainment cell, fingers resting lightly on Rue's shoulder. A guard approached, trembling. Why? Why provoke war? Why now? Ellie looked up, the light catching the scar along her jaw, a clean line that had healed without vanity. She didn't answer the guard. She answered Rue. "Because sometimes," she said, "you need to remind the galaxy that being gentle doesn't mean being weak." The guard opened his mouth, but the station's lighting flickered. Once, twice, and all external communications cut off. Ellie leaned her head back, closed her eyes, and whispered to no one. "They'll be coming now." Outside the chamber, the galaxy was already changing, and inside the silence, a small girl hummed a lullaby. Not afraid, not confused, just waiting. The arena of sovereign reconciliation had once been a sacred site for conflict resolution. Now, it was somewhere between a bloodsport cathedral and an interstellar fashion show. Beneath triple suns and rotating artificial moons, it shimmered with force fields, levitating stone tiers, and a kaleidoscope of sponsor banners that blinked ads in 6,000 languages, including one spoken only in screams. The crowd had gathered early. Over 70 species packed the anti-gravity stands, bodies gleaming, pulsing, radiating sense and biolight. The Xandari coiled across rows, exhaling bioluminescent mist with each bet. The Drux floated in nutrient spheres, rhythmically thumping their tentacles in anticipation. The Parex, twitching with anticipation, devoured flash-frozen rodents with unsettling glee. Everyone was here to witness what they called the symbolic duel of breeding violations. The Galactic Empire had dressed it up in tradition, legality, and ritual, but it was still what it had always been, public punishment. There had never been a human combatant before. Never been in need. Humans negotiated, complied, apologized. They bowed when required and voted when allowed. Today, however, was different. The champion of the empire stood in the center ring, a circular platform of carved obsidian laced with veins of shifting plasma. Krontal the Bonehammer raised all 6 arms in salute, his exoskeletal plates clanking in rhythm to the anthem of the core worlds. He was massive, armored in natural chitin the color of bruised twilight, his face a snarling tangle of mandibles and trophies. The crowd loved him. He had torn his way through 11 species, including a sentient gelatin that never quite reformed afterward. His victories were sold as perfumes. His biography had outsold religious texts. His fists were rumored to carry the gravitational force of a collapsing moon. And somewhere in the upper tiers, a teenage galactic noble fainted just from his flex. Krontal basked in it. The announcer's voice, filtered through 5 translation layers, boomed. On behalf of the Empire, the Bloodvat dynasty, and the Council of Reproductive Integrity, Krontal will today defend galactic virtue against unauthorized genetic multiplication by Terran insurgents. The crowd roared, each in their own species-specific way. Some released spores. Others bit companions affectionately. A few simply screamed. In the prep chamber below the arena, Lem Reese stood in silence. She wore no armor, just a long gray robe tied above her swollen stomach, one boot loose from an old injury that hadn't healed quite right. Her skin bore faint scars, a map of forgotten wars, and her hair, braided and looped behind her ears, was streaked with gray that hadn't been there a year ago. No makeup. No enhancements. No weapon. There was only a band, a plain, brushed metal bracelet on her wrist. It blinked once every 8 seconds, waiting for the biometric match it hadn't needed in years. She looked calm. Not because she felt safe. She simply understood the stakes. A small monitor on the wall showed Rue sitting on a bench behind a reinforced privacy shield. She was coloring on the floor with a stylus Ellie had given her 3 years ago, drawing little ships and suns and stick figures. One of the figures had 3 arms. Another was bleeding. Rue had talent. A soft hiss announced the arrival of an official. The figure, elongated, cloaked, nervously twitching, approached holding a ceremonial scroll. Its voice was wet. You may withdraw, should you choose. The Empire accepts mercy pleas from maternal class citizens. Public defeat is unnecessary. Ellie turned. Is Krontal withdrawing? The official blinked. No, of course not. Then, neither am I. The scroll trembled slightly in its hands. You're unarmed. Ellie flexed her fingers, slow and deliberate. No, she said. I'm underestimated. As the official slinked away, a voice echoed in the chamber, a mechanical tone layered with static and undertone, clearly from the arena's AI overseer. Combatant Ellie M. Reese, Terran designation. Mother Class Combatant, you are cleared for symbolic representation. Enter the arena when ready. Ellie stepped forward. She passed under the Great Arch, the Gate of Resolution, carved with the names of every champion since the arena's founding. Her footfalls echoed as she emerged into light, and for a heartbeat, the crowd fell to silence. A human, a pregnant human. No weapons, no armor, no entourage, just the ghost of a smile. Somewhere above in the council skybox, Lord Scalevar Drax leaned forward with interest. He said nothing, but the twitch of his left claw was noted by 3 aides, all of whom mentally filed it under pending concern. Krontal growled. You are meat, he announced, voice dripping through vocalizers. A walking nursery. Ellie stopped a dozen paces from him. I'm also your opponent. He laughed, for lungs inflating grotesquely. I am the breaker of planets. I devour stars. What are you? Ellie tilted her head. Tired. He roared and slammed his hammer fist against the obsidian floor, causing a minor quake. Ellie remained still. Begin, said the AI. The floor shifted, platforms rising and falling in random sequence. Gravity wells activated at unpredictable vectors. Lighting changed every 2 seconds to mimic celestial transitions. The entire arena was designed to disorient species with linear vision. Krontal launched forward with a speed that made several audience members flinch. He spun, claws flashing, hammer fist raised to strike. Ellie waited. The first blow cracked the platform behind her as she sidestepped with minimal effort. The second was aimed at her abdomen, deliberately. She pivoted on her back foot and allowed the gravity shift to aid her arc, sweeping under his left arm. "She's dodging," someone muttered. "She's dancing," someone else corrected. Krontal bellowed in frustration. "Stand still, breeder." No. He came again, this time with rage behind the movement. His strikes were precise, drilled, heavy. He was every inch the warrior they'd promised. But Ellie had already seen it. She'd seen the slight drag in his third right leg, the fraction of a second lag in his weight transfer when he twisted, the overcompensation from a healed fracture. She hadn't come to win by force. She'd come to read him. Another sweep. Another near miss. He overextended, again, and Ellie tapped the floor with her heel. A ripple of energy surged from her bracelet. The platform's local gravity shifted. Krontal stumbled. She ducked inside his guard, placed a single palm on his lower sternum, and pushed, not hard, just precisely. Momentum, physics, anatomy, she'd used them all. The fall was spectacular. Krontal crashed backward into a rising platform, bounced off an energy barrier, and slammed into the floor with enough force to crack one of his mandibles. The arena gasped. Ellie didn't follow up. She simply stood, waiting. Blood pooled beneath him, dark, alien, steaming. His breathing grew erratic. Rage turned to disbelief. She hadn't struck. She hadn't needed to. Up in the stands, a Drux War priest whispered, "She knows where we're weakest." Another responded, "No. She knows how we lie to ourselves about our strength." The AI declared, "First strike, Terran combatant. Status, pending resumption." Krontal rose with a howl. "You mock the right." Ellie interrupted. "I fulfill it." She could feel Rue watching. Not directly, but in the way you know when a child holds their breath. Krontal charged again, one leg limping now. Ellie waited until the last second, then triggered her bracelet a second time. Another gravity shift. Krontal's strike collapsed inward, his own force slamming him face first into the ground. The AI paused, as if unsure whether to announce it yet. Ellie raised her hand. "I concede nothing," she said. "But if you cannot rise within 20 seconds, the duel ends." Krontal growled. He tried. He failed. Ellie stood over him, backlit by the arena's shifting light, her belly full and unmistakably human. 20 seconds passed. The arena fell to silence. Then thunder. Applause in every species form. Some in awe, others in terror. Ellie turned away from her opponent, didn't look back. From the skybox, Lord Scalevar Drax watched her exit and muttered only one word. Unacceptable. Down in the prep chamber, Rue smiled and whispered, "I told you." Ellie stepped through the arch, calm and bleeding from a single shallow cut on her cheek. In the distance, somewhere inside the Council's sealed diplomatic corps, an emergency meeting was already being called. She had won, and they had no idea what that meant. The arena lights dimmed to mimic dusk on a dying world, symbolic, poetic, and a little smug. The Galactic Council loved pageantry, loved spectacle, loved the illusion of fairness. Ellie stood at the center again. She had cleaned the shallow cut on her cheek with a strip of linen and ignored the medic drone buzzing near her temple. She declined their pain inhibitors with a look. They backed off. Machines, unlike bureaucrats, understood instinct. Her opponent was not Krontal this time. Krontal was being carried off by 6 medics and 2 silent watchers who would later declare his internal injuries a symbolic consequence of karmic failure. His mandibles hadn't quite stopped twitching. No, the Empire had insisted on a rematch. Technically, a follow-up duel for honor clarification. And this time, they sent in what passed for a legend. Erx Talshin of the thrice-blooded crown, a towering nightmare of reflective plating, quad-segmented limbs, and a plasma staff built from the harvested spinal filament of extinct war beasts. If Krontal was violence in muscle, Erx was violence carved into religious geometry. Ellie, still in her same gray robe and dust-worn boots, watched him enter. She noted the precision of his stance, the elegance of his weapon, and the way he didn't bother to acknowledge her. He was here to restore order. Nothing more. The announcer didn't even bother with dramatics this time. Commencing ritual second trial. Combatant Reese, Taryn, versus Talshin. No mercy. No draw. No appeal. Rue, still behind reinforced shielding, clutched her drawing slate tighter. One of the guards nearby tried not to look at her. It felt wrong. She looked too calm. The match began without ceremony. Urks lunged forward, plasma staff humming with an eerie, harmonic whine. He struck in a pattern coded to disorient enemies with slower cognition. Left, feint, overhead arc, mid-stab reversal. Designed to overwhelm, to break the mind before the body. Ellie didn't counter. She evaded. Barely. A twist to the ankle, a half-turn, the sharp adjustment of posture against gravity field shifts, every move precise, measured, quiet. Urks snarled, or made the equivalent of a snarl. Your tactics are pedestrian. Ellie responded with breath, not words. She ducked under another arc, allowed her wrist to graze the platform's outer ridge, and timed her rotation to the pulse of the arena's orbit-adjusted gravity core. Urks missed. Again. But this time by inches. She didn't need to win through domination. She needed him to miss enough to begin doubting. Doubt, after all, was the beginning of collapse. From the skybox, Counselor Drax whispered to his assistant, "She's not fighting for her own sake." "No, my lord." "She's demonstrating." "Yes, my lord." Back in the arena, Urks shifted strategies. He widened his stance, slowed his tempo, adapted. Ellie noted it. Good. He wasn't blind to failure. That made this more dangerous, or more useful, because the galaxy wasn't watching to see her win. It was watching to learn what it meant for a human mother to refuse surrender. Urks struck low. Ellie blocked with her forearm. Plasma hissed against flesh, superficial. But she winced. He saw that. He pressed forward. That was the mistake. Because Ellie didn't retreat. She stepped in. Close. Too close. She let him see her eyes, unflinching, clear, ancient. And she whispered, so soft it barely passed between them, "You missed." He blinked. In that breath of confusion, she rotated her hips, redirected his staff with the bone of her forearm, and dropped into a lower stance. Her foot struck his joint. His armor cracked. The sound wasn't dramatic, it was subtle, like a hairline fracture in trust. Urks staggered. Not from pain. From surprise. Ellie straightened, breathing slower now, measured. Blood ran down her arm, dark and warm. He adjusted his grip. "You sacrifice yourself for a message," he growled. "Why?" Ellie didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked beyond the arena, beyond the lights and blinking translators, past the watchers and the senators, toward Rue. The girl was standing now, one hand on the barrier glass. Ellie returned her gaze to Urks. Because some truths can't be explained. They have to be felt. He struck again. She caught the staff. Pain seared through her fingers, into her shoulder. She allowed it, used it to anchor her. And then, one step forward, shoulder to chest. She drove her weight, not strength, weight, into his sternum. Shifted her center. Redirected his momentum upward. Urks stumbled. Ellie spun. The staff left his grip. It flew, end over end, and lodged itself in the far platform wall. The crowd gasped in 10 simultaneous languages. Urks stared at her, unarmed, stunned. "You knew that would work," he said. "No," she said. "I trusted that you'd underestimate me. Everyone else has." The arena pulsed with light. A wave of red, then gold. Victory. Declared. Ellie didn't raise her fists. She didn't bow. She just turned and walked. Past the energy fields. Past the trembling officials. Past the data recording swarm bots hungry for a quote. A bloodstain trailed behind her, each step pronounced. She paused only once at the gate, turned back, and locked eyes with Urks, who still hadn't moved. "You didn't lose because you were weak," she said. "You lost because you assumed I came alone." Urks frowned. "Didn't you?" She smiled. Watch what happens next. Then she left him in silence. As she reached the prep chamber, Rue was already waiting, arms outstretched. Ellie knelt, groaned slightly as her knee cracked, and hugged her. "You bled," Rue whispered. "Didn't spill," Ellie said. "That's the rule." A screen flickered on behind them. An urgent update. Not from Earth. From the fringe worlds. 3 minor systems had just declared neutrality, breaking centuries of imperial loyalty. A 4th transmitted a simple message. "We recognize maternal sovereignty." The council meeting, in orbit, dissolved into chaos. Lord shouted. Translators broke under the load of simultaneous panic. Allies demanded clarification. Ellie stood, brushed hair from her daughter's brow, and turned to the aide waiting near the exit. The aide, a trembling Esharian turn, stammered, "Will you be giving a formal statement to the Senate?" Ellie raised an eyebrow. She'd just torn a galactic war beast out of his own myth. She had no patience for statements. Rue spoke for her. "We'll give them silence. That scares them more." Ellie nodded once. "Start warming up the ship." "Where are you going?" the aide asked. "Home," she said. "Where they can find me. If they're brave enough." The aide flinched. Somewhere in the galaxy, another warship went offline. Not from violence. From surrender. And above the arena, the stars seemed, just for a moment, to flicker in rhythm with a child's quiet hum. They'd called her a breeder. Now they called her something else. Something that didn't translate. And wouldn't need to. Not after what came next. The transmission was silent for 13 seconds. In galactic diplomacy, that might as well have been a death sentence. In those 13 seconds, over 400 species watched the same footage. Lem Reese walking out of the arena of sovereign reconciliation with blood on her robes, a cut drying on her cheek, and a 7-year-old girl with a coloring slate tucked under one arm. She didn't raise a fist. She didn't shout. She just walked, boots quiet against the obsidian floor. The footage looped, over and over. On the Council of 23's diplomatic network, the silence shattered. "Was she enhanced?" a voice demanded. "No," answered the Imperial Bioexaminer. "Terran-based genome. Slightly elevated synaptic rhythm, but within reproductive norms." "She bled," said another. "She was injured. She felt pain. And still disabled a bone hammer and a crown enforcer," a third whispered. "She's not the weapon," said Lord Scale Vardrax, seated alone in the secure chamber aboard the Imperial Dreadnought Victory Edict. "She's the warning." The lights in the chamber dimmed as a new data packet slid across the encrypted channel. It wasn't labeled. No military tags. No formal encryption. It was just a song file. The technicians hesitated. Vardrax said nothing. The file began to play. A child's voice, singing in Terran English. A lullaby. Simple. Soft. Off-key in a way that made half the translators flicker. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." As the melody played, the display filled with images. Not warships. Not schematics. Children. Human children. In refugee camps. On colony ships. In graft trenches and burned-out fields. Laughing, fighting, hugging dogs, eating toast. Then the screen cut to static. And one final image held. Ellie, standing on the hull of a Terran scout ship, her daughter asleep against her shoulder, both of them outlined by a broken sun. Then nothing. No demands. No speech. No declaration. The galaxy reacted accordingly. First came the panic. 3 mid-tier systems filed emergency neutrality motions with the Empire, citing lack of internal trust in current galactic protection policies. A dozen corporate-owned moons rerouted exports from Imperial-controlled trade lanes to Terran-sanctioned vessels within 2 hours. The Noxathy media stream, normally a propaganda echo chamber, released a documentary titled Mother of Momentum, the human who rewrote war. And still, Earth said nothing. Ellie said nothing. She didn't need to. At a quiet way station between star lanes, Ellie stood before a steel sink in a rust-colored galley aboard a Terran diplomatic cruiser named Quiet Honor. She rinsed the blood from her robe in silence. No theatrics. No aids. Just water and fabric and time. Rue was nearby, curled up with a blanket and a half-eaten fruit bar. She was humming again, softly, idly, the same tune they'd heard in the transmission. Ellie watched the water swirl pink, then clear. She didn't look up when the door hissed open behind her. "Ambassador Reese," said the voice. She didn't correct the title. A Terran operative entered. Black uniform, no insignia. His voice was even, but his shoulders were tense. "Council wants to send you back to Earth. Parade. Medals. Speeches." Ellie wrung out the robe and hung it carefully beside the heating vent. "Declined." The operative didn't argue. "We expected you to." He stepped forward and handed her a small, encrypted disk. "The Empire is building a case. Officially, they're labeling your actions unauthorized maternal aggression within a neutral combat framework. Unofficially, they're terrified." Ellie took the disk, but didn't plug it in. She didn't need to see it. She already knew. "I didn't win," she said softly. The operative frowned. "You did." "I didn't," she repeated, turning to face him. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were iron. "I made them pause." "That's different." The man hesitated, then nodded. "So what's next?" She looked toward Rue. The child was sleeping now, thumb curled loosely against her jaw. Ellie whispered, "We keep walking." Behind them, the diplomatic comms flickered again. This time, a message came through, not in words, but in planetary logs. A border station near the bleeding verge had gone dark. Not destroyed. Just dark. No life signs. No power. No traces. One of the species stationed there, Krellin, known for their indifference, sent only a 2-word broadcast. She passed. The rest of the galaxy didn't know what to make of it. Back aboard the Victory Edict, Vardrax sat in front of a wall of shifting images, battle plans, demographic maps, cultural analysis. Aide number 14 trembled behind him. "They say she didn't use any weapons." Vardrax didn't respond. "They say she wasn't even briefed. She just showed up." Still silence. Aide number 14 added, voice dropping lower. "And the child, the daughter, we have reports that she..." Vardrax turned. Slowly. "The child didn't fight." "No, sir, but..." "She didn't need to." There was a long pause. "Sir, should we retaliate?" Vardrax stood. He walked to the viewport, watching stars flick past like thoughts unspoken. "No," he said. "Because you don't retaliate against a culture that raises women like her." He turned, eyes sharp as a broken blade. "You fear it." And across the stars, that fear began to ripple. In one system, a group of students painted a mural of Ellie with Rue in her arms, flowers in the shape of old Earth symbols blooming from her shadow. In another, a military academy replaced their doctrine lecture with a review of her arena footage. "Observe how the human uses patience," the instructor said, voice reverent. "Observe what patience becomes when weaponized." Meanwhile, aboard the Quiet Honor, Ellie and Rue sat across from each other in the narrow mess. A bowl of rehydrated noodles steamed between them. Rue slurped one with loud enthusiasm. "They're all scared now," she said. Ellie nodded, folding another napkin with patient fingers. "They should be." "But not of you," Rue continued. Ellie met her daughter's gaze. "No, of what I showed them." Rue thought for a moment. "Which was?" Ellie's voice was barely above a whisper. "That we bleed, and still choose to stand." Silence settled again, warm and whole. Then the alert pinged. Not from the Empire. From the Terran side. It was an invitation, a request, from the Rigashi people formerly aligned with the Galactic Senate, requesting a maternal ambassador to discuss reproductive sovereignty laws and conflict mediation. Ellie didn't blink. The galaxy was already beginning to pivot, not because Earth made a speech, but because it didn't have to. She picked up the tablet, scanned the message, and said only, "Set course. We go where we're needed." And Rue grinned, the way children do when they sense they're part of something vast. The ship turned. Behind them, systems shook. Alliances strained. And somewhere in the bowels of an Imperial archive, a new entry was quietly, anonymously made. Human subtype, mother class combatant. Threat rating, unknown. Engagement recommendation, Avoid direct contact. Back in the stars, in an unnamed quadrant with no known value, a scout drone picked up a final burst of signal. Someone humming the second verse of a song the galaxy was still trying to understand. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. No weapon. No declaration. Just a voice. Just a mother. Just a mic drop. And a galaxy too afraid to breathe.